Good evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, as per usual, Tez. We're back doing a live stream. So if you are watching this live, you're either watching it on twitch.tv/Tezius, Tezzrus, TikTok, or YouTube. Thank you very much for joining in live if you are, but if not, if you're catching this up on VOD or on audio podcast platforms, consider joining a live show every so often. I normally do announce when they're going to be on the Discord or on X, ministry_horror. It's always a lot of fun. We chat horror live. I will respond to things popping up in the chat, and we generally, after the show, hang about for a bit, maybe to chat about some good old-fashioned wrestling or watch a film, which is the plan for this evening, to do both. So we're back. It's been a hectic old week, as it always is, as life is in general. I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people. We actually did a recording, and I say we because last night was the recording for episode 2 of 90 Slay Fiancé with my fiancée Victoria. So we had watched The Blair Witch Project, first time viewing for her, which is the whole purpose of the show. And we talked our thoughts and also gave some updates on wedding and honeymoon plans, which will affect some of the content later this year going on the Ministry of Horror, but for the good. Some cool things that we're going to see. So I'm hoping to get that edited this weekend. It's already looking like quite a busy weekend. No rest for the wicked. But hopefully looking to get that edited and put up this weekend onto Patreon. Patreon.com/Ministry of Horror. Now, if you don't have Patreon, and I completely get it because times are tough, but you think, oh, I would like to see 90 Slay Fiancé, and you know, when are we going to be able to see them? We've discussed, and when we get to doing a third episode, and we're trying to do it once a month, we are going to do that third episode live on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, but predominantly Twitch. You know, if it goes live on the other areas, then that's great. But it will definitely be going live on Twitch. So be sure to listen out for when that is occurring. And in line with that, I'm going to have to put up a poll on the Discord, on social media, with a few films, suggestions, that Victoria hasn't seen before, so we can get a bit of a listener-viewer poll on what film she should have to watch for episode 3 of 90 Slay Fiancé, which we'll then be discussing on a live show. So that's very exciting. Get some input from what people think she should watch. You'll get a gauge of what sort of film she likes from her opinions on Mulholland Drive, which was the first episode, and then when the latest one goes live, you'll hear what she thinks about the Blair Witch Project. So it depends really on if you want to steer her further down one or two of those roads, or take a completely different approach. I'll try and get a general idea of some great or renowned or notorious films in the horror genre that she hasn't seen. But yeah, just giving you all a heads up on that. Now, she's also had some input in tonight's show. So I was chatting to her earlier this week, and I've mentioned on the last couple of shows, it seems, that we do seem to be in a bit of a horror drought at the moment. So in terms of new, fresh horror that is available on streaming or even at the cinema currently, at least as far as I'm aware, it seems to be a little bit of a quiet patch. We do actually have a new film to review later on. There was a new film on Shudder, so I have watched that. I will be reviewing that, and that is a coming-of-rage story called Bloody Axe Wound. It's quite a title. Going to be reviewing that a little bit later on. But in terms of what to really talk about on the show, because at that point I really was just struggling. You know, if you're like me, you've got a number of different streaming services or available to you or ones that you're paying for, and you end up thinking, I want to watch a film tonight, and spend the majority of the time scrolling, and then it's getting later and later, and then you think, oh, do I really want to put a film on now? I'll just watch something I've seen before. because I do that a lot, and it may well be The Office US, or it may well be some other show, or just YouTube. I will just quite often go onto YouTube. As Fran in the chat says, hey Fran, choice paralysis, and that is very true. But quite often when it comes to watching a new horror film, unless I've been able to get to the cinema, what I will tend to do is see, has Shudder dropped anything new? No? Okay. Prime. What does Prime have in the horror realm that's dropped new recently? Because Prime, since we don't have the ability to do actual watch parties anymore, it does seem to have got better horror choices all round. But it's a very quiet week, or very quiet weeks. So the idea Victoria put forward to me is, why don't I kind of give like a bit of a horror drought prepared pack? So I kind of took that and thought, okay, interesting. So what I've done, and this is by no means extensive, there's a number of films that I could have picked on some services and other services. Hey, slim pickings. What I have done is I have had a look at the streaming services that I have available, or that I use or have access to. And I've selected about 3, on average, films or TV series, which I think, okay, if this is something you're a fan of, or if you have this service, or if you're thinking about having this service, these are what I would recommend giving a watch. Now, some of them are going to be your more obvious films. Some of them may be films that are a little bit outside of what you may expect potentially, but it's basically just to give you some horror inspiration if you're in these times like me and you're thinking, what can I watch? What can I watch? Well, even if you've seen these films before, they're definitely worth a revisit at least. So we're going to be chatting a little bit later on about the horror drought and what you can watch to fill that time. So outside of that, in terms of catching up, we didn't end up doing Dead Space this week. As I mentioned on the streams, if you've watched any of the gaming streams, Monday was a little bit of a killer day. Work was crazy. Other things going on around the house were crazy. And by the time it got to the evening, I was like, I'm just not in the headspace to stream. And that can happen. Sometimes, you know, when doing any sort of streaming, you have to try and be engaging, and obviously I'm by no means an expert. You know, it's a very, 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 in the grand scheme of things, a very, very small channel that we're running over here, but it's fun. And if you're not really in that headspace to have fun, then you have to just assume that anyone watching or joining or watching a VOD isn't probably going to have that much fun. So why are they going to watch? And certainly, why would they return to future shows? So I thought against it. I thought, let's just not stream tonight. It's just not working. It's a bit of a shit show. So I ended up jumping in on Tuesday, sorry. And I'd wanted to stream a Final Fantasy game for a little while, because Final Fantasy is probably one of my favourite series. I've certainly not played all of them. I've definitely not completed all of them. I think I've only actually completed 15 and 16, so the more modern ones, and I've come close with 13, and I don't know if I ever came close with 10 back in the day. I sunk a good amount of time in Final Fantasy X when it first came out on PS2, but I never finished it. Trying to right that wrong now. So I'd previously at one point bought a digital copy on the PlayStation, but I then also picked up a physical copy on the Switch. So if you're like me, you tend to end up having multiple copies of the same game because, well, just, you know, oh, it's more convenient to play it on this service, or oh, it's on offer. It's stupid. But I picked up on Switch, and I've actually been having fun playing it because my Nintendo Switch has been gathering dust for a long time. It's certainly not my go-to console. It's a console I rarely play much handheld, if at all. But I have been having some fun revisiting that game. And turns out it's actually very simple to connect it to my capture card for streaming. So we played that, had a great time. Now, out of that, one of the viewers that dropped in was a chap called Danny, who I used to go to school with. Danny is someone who, if you watched the anime episode, I may well have name dropped him then. Anime episode was a little while ago. So during that episode, I talked about my kind of introduction to anime. I'm by no means a connoisseur, and really the only anime that I would say I like is the older films that I saw growing up, Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. What I was then introduced to from Danny would have been Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll, those sorts of things. And then later on, I discovered through YouTube Berserk. But someone I used to be in a band with, someone introduced me to a lot of Asian horror, like Ishi the Killer, Audition. I believe he might have introduced me to that. So it's good to reconnect. He was a big Final Fantasy head, big video game collector back in the day, and still to this day loves his board games. Anyway, we then got to chatting off stream, and he's going to be posting me a bit of a goodie bag because he's a big collector. He's got tons and tons of PS2 games and various platform games. And he basically said, look, I've got a bunch of games that I've only picked up because they were cheap or I had them on other versions. So, I'm quite happy to send you a few games. Here's a selection. Just pick whatever you want from it. So yeah, I am going to be getting a bit of a video game retro care package in the post in coming soon. So very, very excited for that. Very, very thankful for that. And what will happen is I will dust off the PS2 because I do have a PS2. Picked up a console a little while ago when I went for a little bit of a retro binge. And we're going to try and work through some of those games. Whether that is to replace Zelda, I'm going to see how Zelda goes. We're playing Zelda on Sundays. I'm going to see how that goes. I have found the last 2 streams I've done of it, I haven't really managed to achieve a lot in the hour or hour and a half that I've sort of played for. Maybe I need to stick more time into it. I don't know, work's kind of crazy with overtime. It's just it's managing that work-life balance. But maybe we change tactic, which would mean that I still haven't completed Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, I'm aware. Maybe we change tactic and try out these retro, PS2 RPG games, although one of them is Max Payne, which I'm very excited about because I loved that back in the day. I'm not too sure. What I have decided, though, is I am finally, whether it's this weekend or next week, I am finally, as a general podcast, to go out, probably a fairly bite-sized one, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, but to go out on the podcast platforms, audio only, to finally do a retro video game show. And that is going to be coming from the enjoyment that I have found playing Final Fantasy X again. Because Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy game. And we talked a little while ago about doing a retro gaming podcast and how that would work, or would it be a stream? And since that initial discussion, the streaming game has kind of come on leaps and bounds. I'm doing it a lot more regularly. I'm having a lot of fun playing video games on a regular basis, really rediscovering my love of video gaming. But also just because of the fun that I had playing Final Fantasy X recently, I kind of figure what I'm going to do is just do a little mini episode, talk about the game, talk about its history, but also just kind of talk about my experience of it then and now, and how they transpose. And my experience of playing it on its original console versus now. So that's something which we've talked about for a very long time, but I think I'm probably going to try and actually do in the next week or so, is just record a little show for the general podcast platforms. So don't worry, it's not going to be, if you are interested in it, it's not going to be like a Patreon exclusive. That's just going to be going out on the Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Amazon Music. We've got Eddie the Beast in the chat as well. Eddie's joined. Thank you very much for joining the show, Eddie. I hope you're well. Hope you've had a good day, mate. So, without further ado, my office is already roasting up a storm, so I'll whack the window open. We're going to get now to the horror news. This is the news. Oh, oh, oh. For some reason, in my headphones, the news music was playing, but the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street clips weren't. They were coming through my screen, but the news and music. Technical issues. Technical issues. This is the joy of a live stream. I would say if I was recording, I would edit around it, but you know that my editing is fairly on the lazy side of things. So, similar to the discussion of the horror drought, we're also just generally in a bit of a news drought. There's, again, on bloodydisgusting.com, which is where we get all of our horror news, there is no new film releases list for the week. So it really is a bit of an odd one as to what is well, it's not an odd one. It's just we're in the horror lull season. All of the horror films are going to hibernate, ready for October, which, hey, I can't wait that long for new horror films. But, as mentioned, bloodydisgusting.com. Now, we're going to start off with some good news. John Carpenter is to finally receive his Hollywood Walk of Fame star in April. This comes from Alex DiVincenzo. Master of Horror, John Carpenter will be honoured with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on April 3rd at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. Hollywood Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Steve Nissen will serve as MC for the event with guest speakers to be announced. The dedication ceremony will be live streamed on the Walk of Fame website. The press release notes, few filmmakers have had as galvanizing and enduring an impact on cinema as John Carpenter. As director, writer, producer, and composer, Carpenter has brought to the screen some of the most popular and influential films in history. Starting out with his 1978 breakthrough, a low-budget horror film called Halloween, which shook both moviegoers and the film industry with a force that continues to be felt nearly 50 years later. Located at 7000 Hollywood Boulevard in front of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Carpenter's marks the 2,806th star embedded in the sidewalk along Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street. The Hollywood Chamber of Commerce is proud to pay tribute to director John Carpenter with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, said Hollywood Walk of Fame producer Anna Martinez. He has forever shaped the horror genre and has created lasting cinematic masterpieces. It is an honor to dedicate a star to such a talented and influential director. A Nightmare on Elm Street icon Robert Englund and Predator actor Bill Duke are also among the honorees who will receive stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame this year. So again, for a little bit of a horror flavouring on the Hollywood Walk of Fame this time around. So, big news. I mean, it's well overdue. It's really no secret that John Carpenter is probably easily my favourite director, horror genre or not. I think Halloween had such an undeniable mark on me. It was the first horror film I ever saw, and it just... Would I have been the huge horror nerd that I am now without having seen Halloween? I think there was always that intrigue, and it was the same with metal music. There was always that interest and intrigue in the genre and with metal, because they weren't readily available in my age group as a kid. You know, I'd see these VHS covers at before Blockbuster, the local video rental place, and I just think, oh God, I wonder what that's about. I wonder what's going on there. You know, that's what would interest me, is kind of the unknown. Similar with metal music, that I was aware of names like Metallica, like Rob Zombie, but they weren't getting played on the radio. They weren't on Radio 1 or 102.3 2CR FM. You know, they weren't on your FM radios back then. But because of that, there was that interest of, well, now I've got some pocket money. I want to see what this is all about. Or a friend of mine's dad has this horror film on VHS. Let's give it a watch. But I really do think that seeing Halloween for the first time on BBC One or BBC Two really was so impactful for me. And then since then, like, I absolutely love The Thing as well. I'm a big fan of those two, and The Fog. In the Mouth of Madness is a very underrated horror in my eyes. I mean, I've watched it more recently. It's not perfect. The music does date it a bit for to make it very mid-90s, but it's still a really impactful film with some really genuinely quite creepy moments of psychological terror going on in that. And then we've also got The Fog, Escape from New York. I'm not a big fan of Escape from LA, I'll say that. And I didn't really think much of The Ward. I think that was very much, you know, the the filmmaking prowess wasn't so much there anymore. As Fran mentions in the chat, Big Trouble in Little China as well. A huge film. And I'm a big fan of Prince of Darkness. I know some people really disliked that film or saw it at the time, hated it, or since have watched it and it's not really for them. But I just found it really quite creepy. I mean, if you take away some of the storytelling elements in terms of green goo is the anti-god, it's not just Lucifer, it's the anti-god. I like what they did with it. And I do think it's a film with some really, really disturbing moments without being gratuitous either. Yeah, big news. And obviously also mentioned there Robert Englund and Bill Duke from Predator getting stars as well. Yeah, well deserved all around. Next, with a bit of sad news, we get some good news, we get some sad news. Saw series shocker. Is it game over for Saw 11? This write-up is from Jason Jenkins. 7 installments, a soft reboot, a spin-off, an in-between. Well, that's in-between-quel. That does not roll off the tongue nicely. After 2 decades, 10 films, and over $1 billion grossed worldwide, Saw remains one of the horror's most popular and enduring franchises. Unfortunately, the series' iconic villain Jigsaw may have already set his last trap, according to an anonymous source, by discussing his verified as being close to the production of its newest sequel. It's totally dead, the source tells us. It's 100% over, almost a year now. And there'd also been a tweet from 2024 setting a date of 27th of September 2024 for 11. After the commercial and critical success of 2023's Saw X, which was pretty good actually, Lionsgate announced Saw 11 with a teaser image and a September 27th, 2024 release date. Not long after, Saw X director and franchise veteran Kevin Greuterd was also revealed as the upcoming sequel's director, with previous series scribes Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan on scripting duties. In addition, Saw stars Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, and Costas Mandylor were to return to their roles for this outing. However, the release date was eventually pushed back by a year in the spring of 2024, placing its new release date at September 26th, 2025. So what happened? What happened? According to the source, everything went sideways in January 2024. The producers started fighting. Well, one producer attempted to plough forward with the film, the other put up roadblocks, stifling Saw 11's production. But what about Lionsgate? Surely the company that Surely the company that Saw helped build would have stepped in to steer its lucrative ship back on course. Our source suggests Lionsgate didn't have anything to smooth over the disagreement. As it stands, the series still has a number of dangling plot strands left to be tied up. With Saw 11 effectively cancelled, so too is the franchise, robbing its fans and creators of a proper ending. What becomes of the series after this? The insider notes that the franchise might sell somewhere else, but it will likely start over if so. In the end, Jigsaw was thwarted not by cancer or a circular saw to the throat, but a persistent plague to creativity and filmmaking. As the source concludes, greed and ego won. So I can't really remember chronologically what the last entry in the series was. And I know that there had been entries after John Kramer croaked, where there was obviously the detective, what's his chops, following in his footsteps as his apprentice. But yeah, I can't. I'm at a bit of a loss as to what the dangling thread in the current chronology is. That's left it kind of outstanding, because really the later sequels or the later entries were were either prequels to the original or midpoint entries, midquels, as mentioned in the chat. It's kind of difficult to ascertain, for me at least, where we had got to in the chronology and what was kind of left to discuss from that point onwards. But I did think that Saw 11 was pretty good, actually. It did a good job of bringing Saw up to the modern era of horror filmmaking with no let up on the gore either. A generally pretty good story. I think the only thing which I was a little bit eye roll about was the reveal of the killers. But then I guess, the reveal of the killers was kind of similar to how we had some of the killer reveals in like Scream 5 and 6, where it's like, still had a great time with the film, may have rolled my eyes a little bit with how I think it just makes me think of it kind of like it's a bit Scooby-Doo, like the mask comes off and hey, it was me all along. Like, oh, what, really? It's you? I don't know. I kind of think when you get to these later entries, for anything to be a surprise, you have to just go along for the ride, and that's kind of how I've approached those later films. Fran in the chat says the fate of the Lady Doctor in the latest film. She was still alive. Yeah, can I remember the Lady Doctor? Is that the Lady Doctor that killed John Kramer? Or the fate of the Lady Doctor in the latest film? Yeah, but wasn't the latest film set either before the first Saw film or between Saw 1 and Saw 1 and 3, I suppose. Not sure. I'm very, but then again, Saw 3 is set, but I'm very out of the loop with the chronology. I almost need like a big map of, right, when did these things happen? What's their relation? I take that sort of approach because I'm a bit lost on that one. We'll move on. Shadow of God trailer teases holy twist on exorcism horror ahead of April release. Write-ups from Megan Navarro. Arriving just ahead of Easter is the new exorcism horror movie Shadow of the God, which appears to introduce a new twist in the trailer that debuted this morning. An elite exorcist realizes he may be dealing with a holy entity. Shadow of God will debut on Shudder on April 11th as part of its halfway to Halloween lineup. In the film, when several of his fellow Vatican exorcists are simultaneously killed, Father Mason Harper returns to his childhood home to spend time with his childhood friend while he awaits orders from the church. However, this small town holds dark secrets about Mason's past and the religious organization once run by his father, Angus. Thought dead, Angus reappears, forcing a reunion between father and son. But Angus is different now, and before long, Mason suspects he is possessed, not by the devil, but by something holy. When Mason attempts to exorcise the presence from his father, he sets off a chain of events that may end in a cataclysm of biblical proportions, testing everything he holds sacred. Mark O'Brien, Jacqueline Byers, and Sean Johnson star in Shadow of God. Michael Peterson directed the upcoming horror film from a script by Tim Cairo. Peterson previously said in a statement, "We've made an exorcist film that adds new elements to the genre while also honouring its traditions. It was incredible watching this amazing cast and crew bring this fearless script to life. A creative dream come true." Okay, I mean, with the possession subgenre, it is one of those things where I do have the mentality that we've got more bad possession films than we have good, and we do quite often get this feeling that a lot of them are trying to follow the template set out by The Exorcist, which I guess is understandable because when you think possession, you think, well, what could battle a possession? Will it be a religious figure, and what can they do? Well, they can perform an exorcism. So there's certain beats that just feel natural in that progression, and you will get films that will try to take an alternate approach to that, such as, I think, was it Deliverance? Is it called Deliverance? The one that was on Netflix recently, which I felt sort of missed the mark a little bit. The one with Glenn Close in it. Anyway, we do get those approaches, and I think that when it comes to more modern possession films, I've yet to really see one where I've gone, oh wow, that's possession. And I'm not thinking like when I'm thinking possession, I'm thinking more exorcism specific. So I'm not thinking like things that are like Deadite like, you know, like Evil Dead-esque, because technically that's possession. I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking like possession requiring an exorcism. Yeah, I haven't seen the trailer. I guess the approach of it being a holy entity is kind of interesting. I mean, it's something that we did see in the TV series Supernatural, which at some point I will return to. I will actually try and rewatch eventually that show and get up to the point where I dropped off, which was season 12 or 13 or maybe 11. But there was an element there of possession both from below and above, and that ultimately the person who is possessed, there isn't really like a way of kind of coming out of it. That once the entity is expelled from the body, it kind of just it kills the person being possessed. So there's a pretty gnarly approach there. But I like the poster artwork for this. It's got an individual hovering in the air, but their body's all contorted weird, like the back is broken, the feet are facing the wrong way around, the head's got a horrible lilting scream coming out of it. Shadow of God being the title, with the O of God being an upside down crucifix. But under the individual, there's a faint kind of shadow of a crown of thorns, is what it appears. So that's kind of pretty interesting as to how this is done. I mean, and it's Shudder. Shudder is a very mixed bag. I really did enjoy The Cleansing Hour, which was a possession exorcism type film with a different approach. I think that's a fairly underwatched film. So if you're a fan of possession films and you've never seen The Cleansing Hour, it is on Shudder. Give it a look. Let's move on. Hell of a Summer retro style poster pays tribute to the 80s slasher Happy Birthday to Me, right up from Eddie's favourite John Squires. Neon pays tribute to the summer camp slashers of the 80s with their upcoming film Hell of a Summer, and a new poster this week fittingly gives homage to a slasher from the era. Slasher comedy Hell of a Summer will release in theatres on April 4th, 2025. Stranger Things star Phil Wolfhard is the co-writer, co-director and star of the upcoming movie. Exclusively check out the new poster below, inspired by the iconic original poster artwork for the 1981 slasher film Happy Birthday to Me from director J. Lee Thompson. You'll also find the film's previously released red band trailer below. Want to see Hell of a Summer over a week before its official release? Bloody Disgusting is presenting 2 sneak peek screenings in Chicago and Dallas, so you can secure those tickets if you are in those areas now. Hell of a Summer follows 24-year-old camp counselor Jason Hochberg, who arrives at Camp Pineway thinking his biggest problem is that he feels out of touch with his teenage co-workers. What he doesn't know is that a masked killer is lurking on the campgrounds, brutally picking counselors off one by one. Finn Wolfhard wrote and directed the upcoming movie alongside Billy Brick, with both actors who also starring in the film. The cast also includes Fred Heischinger, as well as Defora Woon Atai, Abby Quinn, and Pardis Sirami. Yeah, not seen the trailer. It's a Neon release, and Neon, I'm liking some of their releases for sure. Big fan of Longlegs. The Monkey, I felt, had some good moments in it, some very funny moments. I don't think it was a slam dunk. But Neon are getting some, you know, they're kind of overtaking, I suppose, A24 for that niche of horror. So I do think they're on their way to kind of establishing that kind of stamp of credibility as you know, the sort of independent releases, the independent distributors, where you see the name and you go, oh, okay, it's a Neon film. Because for a long time, A24, if I saw there was a new horror film out by A24, I'd kind of go, this is going to be kind of highbrow, and I'm kind of down for that. In the chat, I can see Fran has mentioned the 3 Supernatural leads are apparently all going to be in the next season of The Boys. Yeah, I'd seen something on Instagram about that, which is quite interesting. I still haven't seen the latest season of The Boys. Is that season 3 or season 4? Whichever season has just finished on TV. I've not actually got around to watching that one yet. It's one of those shows that I do enjoy when I watch it, but I don't, for whatever reason, when it's a new season's coming out, it's not high enough on my radar for me to go, I've got to watch this show. It's not like, for example, Reacher. Me and my fiance love watching the new episodes of Reacher when they drop. I do enjoy The Boys on Prime, but yeah, I'm a bit behind. But I know that when I do eventually start watching it, I'll be like, yeah, I've got to binge this pretty much. It's usually what happens anyway. And then finally on the horror news, we've got some video gaming. Capcom reveals new hell mode for Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny remaster coming this May. Write-up is from Mike Wilson. Capcom has debuted a new trailer for the upcoming remaster of Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny, showing off the director's cut of the game featuring Motohide Ishiro and the all-new Hell mode difficulty. In this mode, players will experience a challenging new difficulty for only the bravest of samurai, where a single hit means instant death. Originally released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2, Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny combines rich narrative and intense demon-slaying combat that made it a standout in the Onimusha franchise. Blending historical figures and supernatural folklore in feudal Japan, the story follows a new hero, Master Swordsman Jubei Yagyu, who sets out on a quest to defeat Nobunaga Oda and his army of demons. As players engage in intense swordplay, they must also make choices that impact the narrative in unexpected ways. The follow-up to the original Onimusha, which was remastered, back in 2019, also features a range of new game mechanics, including an affinity system with Jubei's allies and branching narrative paths, along with new quality of life features such as the ability to swap weapons without pausing the action, and the power to choose when Jubei transforms into an Onimusha. Modern improvements like autosaves, skippable cutscenes, multiple aspect ratios, and more are included, along with an in-game gallery expansion with 100 newly added pieces of artwork and the original soundtrack. Additionally, Capcom reveals a special bonus for players who pre-order Onimusha 2's Samurai's Destiny or pick up the Onimusha 1 and 2 pack bundle early, which will include the Onimusha 2 Orchestra album selection pack featuring orchestral music tracks and helpful in-game items. Players with save data from the 2019 remaster of Onimusha Warlords can also unlock a special outfit for Jubei, inspired by Samanusuke, the protagonist from the original game. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny launches on May 24 for PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PC via Steam. Okay, so this is funny that this is in the news because we are getting a new Onimusha game. Finally, a new one is in development from Capcom now, and it was also recently announced about Onimusha 2. But the original Onimusha, I've been toying with picking up for a little while, the remaster. It is regularly on sale on PlayStation. I'm not sure about Switch, PlayStation and Xbox, and I absolutely loved the game back in the day. It's one of the few games back when I was younger that I actually did stick it with and complete. And funnily enough, after doing the Final Fantasy stream on Tuesday and chatting to my pal Danny, we just chatting retro games, and this one kind of came up, and I thought, you know what, let's have a little look. I happened to be in my living room where the PlayStation is. I happened to look on the store. It was on a really good offer, so I figured, you know what, let's go for it. And the good thing is with that remaster that I would imagine the original must have had tank controls, just because tank controls were the control scheme from back in the PS1, PS2, or early PS2 era. I may well be wrong, but based on the fact that Silent Hill 3, which I think came out later, has tank controls, I have a feeling that may have been the case. The new one doesn't, so it does have more modern controllability. So that's the remaster, the original. So I never played the sequels, so I am quite keen to give Onimusha 2 ago when that drops in May. And I'm pretty sure that the price point will be similar to Onimusha, where it's fairly affordable. So for fans of Capcom games, Capcom Horror, if you've never tried it, or if you're a fan of the more modern samurai type games like Assassin's Creed Shadow, I believe, has recently dropped, which does look very good. But I tend to find with the Assassin's Creed games, I quite often do get sucked into buying them at launch. I never complete them. I never follow the story. I always get lost. I always get stuck. And they'll end up coming to Game Pass, so I'm not going to be dropping my coin just yet on Assassin's Creed Shadow. But fans of that, or Ghost of Tsushima, Noah, that sort of thing. If you've never tried an Onimusha game, the original is absolutely brilliant, and it does sort of have that bit of a template of the Resident Evil type games, the camera angles, but a really, really good story. And I remember the combat being pretty awesome for the time. So there you go, Onimusha 2 coming May 23rd. And then the new game is, I don't know if it's slated for later this year or if it's a 2026 release, but now is a good time to jump into the world of Onimusha and revisit or take a first time visit of some of those old classics. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, that is it for the horror news. That was the news. Oh, ho, 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 ho. We're drinking on the stream. Probably a bad idea.
You hang up on me again, I'll touch you like a fish, understand?
So, we've only got the one review tonight, so it's now into review time. Okay, so as mentioned, bit of a slog recently of trying to find a fresh horror film to watch, and I am gonna have to get the IMDb page because there is really very little information. Very little information on Wikipedia, but I've been looking all week for a horror film to watch, for a fairly new one. I didn't want to just do a retro review. I do like to try and watch a new horror film a week generally, especially in preparation for. Oh shit! I was going to say, especially in preparation for October when I do the 31 Days of Horror Challenge. But I won't be doing that this year because I'm getting married and going on a road trip across America. So I think I can take a year off of that challenge. But in general, for the show, I like to watch a fresh horror film once a week, so I am prepared with some hopefully some good horror takes and get some exposure on some of these films. I mean, unfortunately, I do end up quite often watching some absolute dirge, but hey, we have to take these swings when we can and see where we get on. But this week, aka today, I finally got around to watching a film called Bloody Axe Wound. Bloody Axe Wound is a 2024, I believe, horror film with very limited information on it. 2024 horror film written and directed by Matthew John Lawrence, starring Chet Siegel, David Littleton, and we have an actual cameo at the very start of the film from Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who I was not expecting to see at the very start of this. So, as with all of our reviews on the Ministry of Horror, we will talk about the highs, talk a bit about the plot, talk about any sort of lows, and then we'll get into a score out of 10. So, the plot generally is Abby Bladecut's family business, a video store, has thrived by disposing of teenagers to mimic horror movies. As the first female slasher, she battles gender bias while realizing the harsh realities behind the mass murders. Abby Bladecut is a teenager torn between the macabre traditions of her family's bloody trade and the tender stirrings of her first crush. In the small town of Clover Falls, Abby's father, Roger Bladecut, has built an infamous legacy by capturing real-life killings on tape and selling them to eager customers. But as Abby delves deeper into the grisly family business, she begins to wonder if it's time to take the family's tradition in a new direction. Okay, so this really is a coming of rage story. It's a bit of an indie garage rock approach. I'm not really sure what I'd liken the tone to, but it does have that independent coming of age feel to it, which I guess would be something like, I don't know why, it's nothing like Garden State, but Garden State is the only film that kind of comes to mind when I think of an indie coming of age type story. We've got humor, we've got the interesting dialogue going on between the various characters. Abby is front and center, and she's quite a sassy teenager in this who really, really, really wants to take up the mantle of the murderer in the family. Her dad's getting older. He has suffered a number of wounds as over the years the kids will fight back, and he'll end up dying, being buried alive, and then having to claw his way out of his grave. That's just the way that things work in this universe. But at this point, his body looks like it's covered in burns. He isn't quite able to move like he used to. He even struggled at a more recent point in the film, and in their kind of the recent history of it, to claw his way out of his own grave, which is something he's never had a problem doing before. So he's in a bit of a state of flux at the moment, and his daughter, his adopted daughter, wants to jump into the family trade, but he's a little bit overprotective. It's kind of a case of, well, look, we do these kills, we have to do these kills. The book, the yearbook, tells us, basically this book circles on its own people that need to be killed, the promiscuous, the degenerates, that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of lore going on there. And basically, as it's established later in the film, it's kind of almost like, what if a Jason type, the 80s bullied child, teenager who whatnot is ultimately through a prank led to their death or led to be horribly injured, and then they come back as a murderer. What if that person ended up growing up, still continuing this tradition, whilst also then raising a child, raising a teenager? So that's quite an interesting approach to this film, that he has his traditions that have to be followed, and Abby wants to follow in that tradition herself. But along the way, she initially is very good at doing the killing and shows that she's a natural. But then she ends up getting to know some of the students who have been marked for death. And actually, she's doing quite a good job at making friends and even generating a bit of a love interest with one of the targets. So she does start to question, is this the correct approach to be going? Now, I don't really listen to like garage rock much. I did have a little bit of a phase when I was younger, but the soundtrack in this is pretty good. Some of the songs are actually the standouts in the film. I enjoyed the acting for the most part. No one's really bad in it. There is a little bit of a comedic undertone in places, which works quite nicely. And we are led to a fairly satisfying conclusion that would leave it open if there were to be a sequel. There's not like a particular moment that stands out in this film. There's not like particular deaths that you go, oh shit. There's nothing quite like that. But it's an interesting enough story, and it's got quite a bit of heart to it. Like, we do feel for Abby, where she kind of wants her father's approval, but then she's a teenager. She's making friends now. She's then going through a bit of a rebellious phase. It's all things that kind of naturally occur as part of growing up, as part of coming of age. So this did surprise me. I mean, considering that I'd seen on IMDb, it's got quite a low score. I do feel that that's a little bit unfair, actually. I had a pretty decent time with this. I thought the performances in it were generally quite good. I'll just have a quick look at the cast. I mean, oh, I don't recognise they are. Don't recognise them. So Jeffrey Dean Morgan only has a very small role at the start of the film. Sari Arambulo, who is Abby, very good lead in this. Who's her friend? Eddie Levy is Glenn. He is actually probably the funniest person in this film. Quite a few people do have comedic moments, but he has quite a few. Oh, okay. I've just had a look at his IMDb. I've seen him in AP Bio. I knew I recognised him from something, and he's from the series AP Bio. He is very funny in this, has to be said. And outside of that, I suppose the standout moment for me, quite often when me and my fiance, one of our little kind of banter things is either she's tired really early in the evening or I'm tired really early in the evening. We very rarely actually go to sleep at the same times because I quite often like to game, in the evening, not super late, but I also get up early for the gym. So our sleep cycles are a little bit all over the place, but quite often I will, well, and now she will imitate sleep by just going honk shoo, honk shoo. It's just a little funny thing like that. Anyway, a little bit of an insight there, but the reason I mention that is there's a point in the film when a number of the characters are aware that this lure, this notorious killer in their small town is targeting them, and they decide, okay, well, we need to band up together, go somewhere, get out of town, and try and survive the night. And one of them goes, hey, if we're struggling to stay awake, how about we all take a pill? These are all uppers. These will all keep everyone energized. So they all have these pills, and like an hour later, everyone's struggling to stay awake. They're all feeling so tired, so out of it. And it's like, are you sure that these are uppers? Are you sure that these pills are actually going to keep us awake? And they're like, yeah, I'm sure. I found them in a car outside. And one of them looks at the packaging of the pills and sees that the label has a sticker over it. And when they pull the sticker away, underneath it says honk shoo. And I cracked up. It's one of those things that's really dumb when you say it out loud. But I think because of that little inside joke that we have, I really got a kick out of that. Anyway, as I digress, Bloody Axe Wound is now available on Shudder, at least on Shudder via Prime. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. If you do like a bit of indie comedy with some horror thrown in there, some decent gore as the film progresses, but it is ultimately a coming of age storyline, then this is well worth a watch. It's pretty interesting, and I do like the aesthetics in it, and I thought the music was great. So 6.5, I should say, out of 10 for Bloody Axe Wound. So our main chat for the show, I'm not really going to call it a featured presentation because we're not going to be focusing on a particular film series. We're not going to be focusing on a particular director's work or particular things. We're kind of doing a little bit of a discussion on a number of projects on streaming. I'm not even going to look up the individual minutiae on these films. I'm kind of just going to talk on them from memory. But if, like me, you are experiencing a little bit of a horror drought right now, where you're finding yourself going, oh, what can I watch tonight? No. Okay, nothing on Netflix. Let's go to Prime. No. Okay, nothing on Prime. Let's, so on and so forth. It can be really annoying. You end up losing the majority of your evening. As mentioned earlier on the chat by Fran, choice paralysis, and I struggle from that quite a lot. But if you're in that position, I'm going to recommend you a number of different streaming services, which you may already have, you may have access to. Some of them are free, and you may find something on here that you think, oh, I wasn't aware that that's on there, or, oh, I've been meaning to watch that, or I used to love that film, I haven't watched it in ages, give it a rewatch. Hopefully this will revitalize your horror choices, potentially. So we're going to start with Netflix. Netflix, for a number of years, was my go-to streaming service. It was the first proper streaming service that I'd really used, I suppose, outside of maybe Sky Go, but for Sky TV. And there was a period where, back when I knew how to do it, before things got more technical and whatnot, you could change your DNS setting to view different regions. And I'd heard that Netflix in America was a lot better than the UK. And at that point, I'm not sure if that's the case now, at that point, that was true. And there was so much more TV series, complete TV series, but also a lot more horror. As time has gone on, you get the odd release on Netflix, but I definitely do feel that it's a streaming platform where a lot of the exclusives aren't quite as enticing, and you do get a lot of guff going on there. And there's not really a huge amount of new horror that drops there, especially from an exclusive standpoint. So we're going to talk about Netflix, but I should preface that a lot of these suggestions of mine aren't necessarily exclusives to those platforms. They're not original productions. Some of them do have original productions on there, of course, but there's not really any, to me, that I could particularly pinpoint. I mean, one of the services does have their exclusives, but there's nothing really that I would say this is a Netflix production. This is a Amazon Studios production, to specify it. But for Netflix, the three films that grabbed my attention, and there are a few classics on there. There's also a lot of guff, but Don't Breathe, I think, is such a hallmark in tension. And I think the title works perfectly for it because the characters are in a situation where you have to just hold your breath and really think about every movement you make, because they've entered the house of a retired military person who is blind, hoping to steal some cash or steal some assets. But this individual is incredibly dangerous. The fact that he's blind does not impede his ability to brutally assault and murder those who have wrongly stepped foot in his property. It goes to some really dark places. There's a particular moment with a turkey baster, which, my goodness, when that is introduced into the film, you're just like, Jesus Christ, this is a next level of messed up. It's directed by Fede Alvarez, who had previously done the Evil Dead requel, and has more recently done Alien Romulus, both of which I loved. But Don't Breathe, I'd recommend on there. And another film which is, again, more modern, I suppose, than some of the films we're going to talk about later on. But it's a favourite of mine. We've talked about it a few times on the show before, and this is also on a few other different streaming platforms. But in terms of when I had a little look on Netflix earlier on today, I thought has to be mentioned. It Follows. It Follows is about a sexually transmitted curse where if you have had intercourse, been intimate with someone who has this curse, they have then passed it on to you. And what that means is that a entity, a being, that can look at like anything, whether it's someone you know, whether it's someone you don't, someone from your past, someone that's no longer alive, it can look like them. And it will walk towards you. And it won't stop. You could drive hundreds of thousands of miles. It will keep pursuing you. I don't know whether it has any sort of transportation abilities or it's just persistent. But this being will continue to follow you. It follows. And when it gets you, essentially, you're dead in quite a horrific looking manner. This film has a brilliant opening, which sets the scene of the paranoia where the individual being pursued can see what is coming towards them, and it's sometimes quite horrific. There's a particular jump scare moment where a very tall individual with no eyes appears in a doorway, and no one else can see them except for Jay, the girl who is being pursued. I think the soundtrack in it is brilliant. It's got this kind of otherworldly, ethereal tone. Performances in it, Michael Monroe, are excellent. So It Follows, really, really dug that. And then finally for Netflix, the other one I've picked, which is a fairly modern film, and it's a film that I've gushed about on the show. I think the 2023 Ghoulies, it may well have got a big award or been an honourable mention. If not, it was definitely mentioned in the 2024 Ghoulies. Thereabouts, it's been mentioned. It's maybe won an award. The Philippou brothers, the Raka Raka group, who did Talk to Me. Very, very hyped when I was initially going into watching this film because I'd followed the guys on YouTube for a little while, and it just did not disappoint. It's the sort of film where there's a level of authenticity in the dialogue between the characters that just makes it kind of feel real. And then the moments, it does a great job of having that camaraderie, that banter, that tone where, not everyone's going to get along, but, everyone's heart is in the right place, or so it seems. And they get into the situation where they're playing this game, they're filming themselves, where they've got this, looks like a mannequin hand, like a tarot hand, potentially. It's covered in artwork. But they light a candle, and it's essentially almost like a drug where you hold the hand, you say, "Talk to me," which invokes a spirit to then come. And you have to allow that spirit into you for no more than either 60 seconds or 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, not sure. There's a specific, particular time limit for it. Because if it goes past that time limit, this spirit probably won't want to leave as it's got use of your body. And in that comes the terror. There's a couple of moments where a particular young character gets possessed and ends up just violently bashing their head into the table and trying to take out one of their own eyes. Really, really shocking stuff in that film. There's even a moment where you get kind of like a bit of a vision of hell where a particular character, like, they just remain possessed, and we get to kind of get a little bit of a glimpse as to where are they, where's their actual essence, their actual spirit right now. And it looks horrible, terrifying. So Talk to Me. I'm going to move now on to Prime. Now, Prime is a service that I do use a lot more these days. Sure, the introduction of ads been a bit annoying. That's happened to all of the streaming services, really, unless you want to pay the premiums, which cost of living crisis isn't always appropriate. I've done a month before of Prime Premium, and yes, it is great to not have ad breaks. I did enjoy it, but not enough to keep paying the extra £3 a month. It all adds up, and it just felt a bit of a luxury that not worth keeping. So we grin and bear the ads. So for Prime, I've got a bit of a two-hitter for a classic film. Prime currently has The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, on there. If you've never seen that, we've done a whole episode on The Thing. It's an absolute classic. Lambasted at its release as being too dark and disturbing. It came out the same year as E.T., which is a very light and fluffy alien film. There's nothing light and fluffy in The Thing. There's dogs, which are fluffy, but they get horribly butchered by this parasite, essentially, from space, where it's an Antarctic research facility gets invaded by this being that can basically take over and infect and imitate individuals. It basically kills while mimicking their body or taking over their body. It enters the cells and replaces the living cells with its own cells. Really, really brilliant stuff. Again, it's John Carpenter. Soundtrack works excellently in it. It's got some genuinely quite creepy moments, especially in the finale. And it's just an iconic horror. Absolutely iconic. And I'm pairing that for a classic. So I'm taking these as one spot together. With Dario Argento's Suspiria, when you talk about the importance of music in horror, The soundtrack by Goblin in Suspiria is just. I mentioned Ethereal earlier on. It just takes you to another place. It's the sort of music that just everything has this dreamlike tone to it that transcends into a nightmare when particular characters are being pursued and murdered in this dance academy in Germany. It's a brilliant film. It leads up to a really terrifying in places finale. Great effects for the time. Some great kills in it. So, Suspiria. My kind of worth a go mention, which I spotted was on Prime at the moment. It's about 10 years old now, but The Invitation. The Invitation is one of these horrors that I put on one day thinking, okay, bit of an artsy indie film, probably like, a bit of a drama. We'll give it a go. Why not? So I probably saw this a few years after it landed on streaming services. But it's about a chap who is in a new relationship, and he's been invited with his partner to visit the house of his ex-wife. I believe they had a kid together, and tragedy struck, which is how the relationship ended, unfortunately. But she now has a new partner, and he appears to be involved in a bit of a religious group. Maybe you might say a cult. And but everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everyone's having a good time. Everything's fine. Staying in this house, there's a few odd interactions over the dinner they've been invited to, this dinner party, until it hits a certain point in the evening where it becomes apparent why they've been invited there, and that there are greater things going on, not just in the house that they're in, but also around that area of Hollywood, I believe. Yeah, it's a pretty tense film as it enters its final third, and the reveal at the very end was the sort that I hadn't seen coming. So The Invitation's got some great performances in it. I think it's Brian Austin Green. I think it's the lead potentially. I could be wrong on that, but The Invitation is definitely one that I would say is worth checking out. And of course, when I saw this was on Prime, I thought I've got to mention it because it is one of my favourite films of like the last 10 or so years. Nicolas Cage in Mandy. Nicolas Cage is an actor who Community sort of coined the question: is Nicolas Cage an amazing actor who's done some bad films, or a bad actor that's been in some amazing films? Because he can't be both. But he is an actor who's done some absolutely standout, incredible pieces of cinema. He has also been in some absolutely abysmal films. But he always gives it his all. I've never really seen a Nicolas Cage performance where he's phoning it in. So you have to give him that. But Mandy is quite it's quite an art house-esque film. But we are following Nicolas Cage's character, name escapes me. I think it's like Red. He might be called Red, who lives with his partner Mandy. He is a lumberjack-esque individual, cutting down trees in this huge forest area, and his partner happens to walk past on the way to their home this like kind of minibus that is transporting this local cult leader and his group, kind of like a bit of a, I don't know if you'd call him like a Jim Jones-esque individual, or how you describe him, but the god complex type who has a number of different wives and has people that will help him and do his bidding, and lives in a bit of a complex. Well, he uses this nightmarish biker group to kidnap Mandy to be his new kind of wife, to be part of his little group. They try to drug her with this looks like it's like an essence of a wasp, and doesn't necessarily go well. She laughs at his attempts to entice her, and he's a bit scorned by this, so he takes brutal retribution on her in front of Nicolas Cage's character and leaving him for dead. He doesn't die. He is drenched in grief and a lust for vengeance, and we follow his route for vengeance against the biker gang, against the cult. It's uber violent, but not in the sense where it goes to the point of being unnecessarily graphic. Nicolas Cage has a powerhouse performance in it. Brilliant soundtrack. Quite a quite a finale in terms of not just the things that he does, but also his mental state as the film comes to an end. It's quite something. So Mandy on Prime. We'll breeze through the next few because we'll be here for a while, because I've noted down a number of different streaming services. So we're not going to go into as much depth on some of these films. But if you happen to have Sky Cinema, they do occasionally get some new, fresh horrors on there. And they also have some of the classics. So Maxine, the third entry in the X trilogy, or the Maxine trilogy, I suppose you should call it, really, or Pearl, whatever. That's a hell of a great film. It's a bit of a love letter to 80s giallo, 80s slasher horror, but it really fits that time period. Same as X had that kind of grindhouse-esque 70s, filthy Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque horror tone to it, and Pearl being a bit of a love letter to that golden age of cinema, where it's got this kind of Technicolor aesthetic to it. They all tell their own story. But Maxine, it's a recent one, and I loved what they went for, this VHS grainy-esque approach to it, just to make it feel authentic to the time period. In terms of classics, Hellraiser. I mean, they've got The Exorcist on there, but I'm going to say Hellraiser. I not long ago got the Quartet of Torment, and while I always enjoyed Hellraiser to an extent, I much preferred for a long time Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. But after rewatching the first film not too long ago, it's like there's a lot of that film that I had just forgotten about, which was kind of more shame on me, because there's some really good moments of terror in that film. I think the only thing that knocks it down a little bit for me is the digital effects at the very end with some of the characters when the Cenobites are getting vanquished. That was a little bit of the time, I suppose, in comparison to a lot of the practical effects gore that's done, which is, genuinely quite terrifying in places. So when they kind of get vaporized or zapped or whatever it is, it's a little bit kind of crappy looking. But I digress. And then we're kind of going back to another modern-ish horror film from the last couple of years, Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. Eli Roth, director who mixed feelings on a lot of his output. I mean, Hostel was a bit of a landmark. It really kind of came out of nowhere and took over. Cabin Fever's fine. I've not really watched any of the sequels, but with Hostel, I always remember it had that feel of being like Euro Trip for the first half an hour, and then I'm going to say Saw, but they're very different films, but taking that approach of torture trauma to the extremes later on. But some of his other films I've really not been a fan of, or I've liked elements of, but then felt that the tone has then let it down in places. But Thanksgiving, I think it's a pretty decent slasher, to be honest. It's got some cool kills in it. Performances are okay. Some of the characters are quite unlikable, I will say, which is probably what drops it down a little bit. But then if he's going for that slasher type from the 80s, I mean, quite often in the classics, a lot of the characters were quite unlikable, or more so in sequels to the classics, probably more accurately. But Thanksgiving, definitely worth a watch if you've not got it and not seen it, and it's on Sky Cinema in the UK currently. And speaking of Sky Cinema, if you do have Sky Cinema, I believe this is still a deal. If you do have Sky Cinema, you do actually get access to Paramount Plus for free. If you don't, you can pay for it. The only thing I would say, and I'm not sure if this affects the films as much as the TV series, but the ads, depending on what you're watching on there, the ad breaks are terrible on Paramount Plus. Talked about it briefly a few shows ago, and I had a bit of a rant about the frequency of ads, and also the repetition of some of the ads just being quite off-putting to the service. I'm not entirely sure if the films are affected in the same way as TV, but something to consider. But they do also have their premium tiers where you get no ads, and they do advertise that a lot. It does make it feel like you're watching ads for the sake of watching ads. Anyway, Paramount Plus, we got some classics on there. You do get the odd new film, but more often than not, it's TV shows, MTV sort of things, or Showtime shows such as Dexter, Original Sin, and things like that. But in terms of films, it is more the classics, and the ones that I've cherry picked have been. There's a number, not all of them. There's a number of Friday the 13th films. So I've picked Friday the 13th, Jason Lives, which is part 6. This is when we get Zombie Jason, or the fully established Zombie Jason. And we also get Tommy Jarvis in kind of, I suppose, his iconic appearance. You know, he's not a little kid anymore. He's not whatever part 5 was. But we've now got the new Tommy Jarvis and Zombie Jason. Great kills in it, tongue firmly in cheek in places. It's even got Jason doing the Batman down the barrel of the gun intro for whatever reason. We have also got the Scream, the first 3 of the trilogy. I don't think 4 is on there, and I don't think Scream 6 is on there, but of the original trilogy, I've gone for the first one. I mean, Scream 2 will always be my Scream, the first one I ever saw in the series. The more memorable moments for me just from that imprint of growing up. But I've gone for Scream 1, you know. It's got an undeniable impact on the series. And Franz also mentioned one which isn't on my list, but is a huge one, and a huge one for me in terms of terrifying the shit out of me as a kid. Fran the Cannon has mentioned Event Horizon. So if you do have Paramount Plus, or I think it might also be on Disney Plus potentially, I'm not too sure. Event Horizon, absolutely astounding film. But the third entry I've gone for, and it's not really one entry, it's kind of 3. It would be 4 if it had the film on there, but Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks Series 1 to 3, or Series 1 and 2, and then Twin Peaks The Return, if you want to be pedantic about it. I don't think Fire Walk with Me is on Paramount Plus, and The Missing Pieces, which I've never actually watched, which is very poor form on me, isn't on Paramount Plus either. But if you have any interest in the works of David Lynch, or grew up watching The X-Files and maybe had heard of Twin Peaks, but never got around to watching it, similar to me, it was never really a thing talked about. I learnt about it much later on. It is odd, but in a brilliant way. I'm currently on my rewatch on Series 2, and it is a slog. At times, I kind of think, oh, okay, the story's now kind of getting on track with some of the aspects of the various branching storylines. And then other episodes, I'm like, oh my God. I don't care about James and his affair with the woman whose brother isn't really her brother, it's her actual boyfriend, and they've murdered her husband and planted on. It's that whole storyline, and anything with James in it is just terrible. But it's part of the show, it's part of its weird charm. Twin Peaks Series 1 to 3, and Series 3 is, or The Return, is later David Lynch, where it is more experimental, it is more pushing the boundaries of modern conventions. I enjoyed the hell out of it. As weird as it was, as irritating at times as it was, the moments when you then get the relief of those irritations mean so much more. I'm talking about Dougie in Series 3 of Twin Peaks. Definitely, I would recommend that. And the music's brilliant in it. Angelo Balatammy, can't remember his name, but Angelo Balatammy, something like that. Brilliant. We're going to jump back on my list to Disney Plus. So Disney Plus does have a lot of 20th Century Fox or 20th Century films, but I have to whittle it down to Aliens. You've got all of the Alien films on there, including Romulus, and including the Alien vs. Predator films, which I don't mind the first film. I don't consider it an Alien film or a Predator film. I look at them as their own bubble. But the first Alien vs. Predator, it's a dumb action film that just happens to have aliens and a Predator in it. The Queen does look pretty cool in Alien vs. Predator. I will say that. That's one positive I can give Alien versus Predator. Requiem I fucking hated. I don't think I've ever rewatched it. I thought it's just dirge. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a film that I should revisit at some point. But Aliens, absolute classic. Copycat. If you're a fan of thrillers, if you're a fan of Sigourney Weaver, keeping on the Aliens discussion. Oh, we got Crimson Mel in the chat. Thank you very much for coming along to the show, Crimson Mel. Hi, dude. Hope you're doing okay. Guys, check out on socials or check out on YouTube and podcast platforms. Unexplained Possibilities, Crimson Mel's podcast. His show. Really, really cool stuff on there. Give the show a follow. Give it a subscribe on YouTube. Crimson Mel's he's good people. Good people. Yeah, can't stay. Just want to say thanks for the repost and such. Yeah. Check on socials and on like X. I've reposted it on Ministry of Horror, Ministry_Horror. Check it out if you can help. If you can help Mel, that would be amazing. Much appreciated. Yeah, we're hope everything is on the up. And hope things are getting better, mate. So if you're in terms of Disney Plus, if you are fans of a good thriller, if you're fans of Sigourney Weaver, Copycat is one that is definitely worth watching. It's when you think thrillers, more often than not, it's like Silence of the Lambs, maybe like The Bone Collector, Kiss the Girls. There's a number of great thrillers out there, but Copycat is one of those ones that came out in that mid-90s period, and it doesn't really get talked about that much, which is a bit of a shame because it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. Essentially, it's a serial killer who is copying famous serial killers from history, so almost making it difficult for the police to pinpoint them and follow their traits based on behavioral analysis, because they're not actually leaving any of their own hallmarks. What their hallmark actually is imitation, being a copycat of those notorious individuals. It's definitely a good 90s thriller if you're a fan of those like I am. And then I've gone for a more recent-ish one from the last 5 or so years, The Empty Man. It's not a complete home run of a horror film, but it's one of those films where I just feel like this could have had a decent cinema run. Like production quality on it, I think is brilliant. The opening setting in I think it's like the Himalayan mountains is astounding. Storyline's pretty good. It's kind of got maybe a little bit of a Lovecraft-esque approach to it. But it's based on a graphic novel, I believe. I've never read the graphic novel. But The Empty Man it's kind of a step above what other films that have maybe similar marketing or similar sort of artwork have, where you wouldn't expect, based on the lack of discussion about it, for it to look as good as it does. It's got good production. That's what I can say on that. The Empty Man, it's good. It's a bit of a detective-esque story, bit of a noir with a horror undercurrent to it. We're going to move on to Shudder. As people know, I watch a lot of Shudder. It's one of the few additional channels that I'll actually pay for. Times are tough, as they always are. But Shudder, mixed bag. We sometimes get months where there's bugger all new stuff coming to it, or the new stuff is just re-uploads of films that have previously been on the service before coming down. Especially in the UK, we don't get new episodes really of Late Night with Joe Bob Briggs, or the Last Drive-In, I should say, with Joe Bob Briggs. But we do occasionally get some gems on there, and there is a lot of classic horror on there as well, kind of similar to the Arrow Player. There's a lot of overlap in their content, but Shudder does have Late Night with the Devil, which was one of my favourite films of the last couple of years. It was a great experience seeing it at an advanced screening. Like, that's always going to be really special to me. But as a film itself, I just thought it was so clever. I really, really liked how it was essentially almost found footage. It's the TV screening of this show that became notorious and has been lost to time. But they found the original prints along with backstage camera footage to repackage it together. Works really nicely. Another exclusive on Shudder, which is one that has only sort of come back into my mind from discussing on the most recent recording of 90 Slave Fiancé with Victoria, Deadstream. Deadstream was so much funnier than I was anticipating it being. It's almost made me a fan straight off the bat of Joseph Winters, who wrote, directed, and starred in it. I believe he at least starred in it. I believe he was behind the scenes as well. But it's involving this world of content creation and streaming and people being cancelled, which is very prevalent in today's society. And an individual who has gone through a form of cancellation, was once popular, now not so much, is heading out to this supposedly haunted building to do a live stream. He's set up loads of cameras around this house, loads of cameras on different objects, and is trying to invoke a spirit. And things go pretty bad for him. But you get moments of terror in it, but they are also peppered in with moments of genuine horror, genuine humor, I should say. In terms of the moments where Joseph's character is absolutely terrified and is hiding, but is then looking on his iPad with the comments from the live chat and is trying to react to them at the same time. It's an absolutely genius film and is well worth a watch. It's almost a shame that it's just a Shudder exclusive, because it's the sort of film where I think, man, more people need to have heard of this film. It almost should have had a cinema run, really. I mean, it may not have had a big cinema run, but it's a film that deserves to be discussed a bit more. And then there's a lot of classics on Shudder, so it's difficult to pinpoint it down. But as mentioned, a number of those classics, like Hellraiser, they are on a number of different platforms. But one that isn't on many platforms is the first film in the Demons series. Demon, my God, we've talked about that before on the show, but Demon, Italian giallo horror, but with demonic possession. Really creepy visuals. The practical effects in it are just absolutely gnarly. Horrible murders and possessions in the film. People getting eyes scratched out and faces just conjoined together almost. And the transformation sequences alone they just make you wince. Like when teeth are falling out and these new fangs are being pushed through the gums. It's horrible, but it's brilliant. So I'm going to give an honourable mention on Mubi. Mubi is a service that I picked up for 3 months for £1. It's £1, 3 months worth of service. Am I likely to continue it after those 3 months? Probably not. I have tried to watch a few things on there, but it isn't really so much a horror-specific service. It is more world cinema, and I do enjoy world cinema, but I do find with time being more and more limited these days, my ability to sit and digest a film with subtitles, unfortunately, is becoming more few and far between. It's something I do want to spend more time doing, but at present, a number of the films on there, not all of them, but a number of them are foreign language. And I just sort of think, well, I don't want to watch it dubbed. I want to watch it as it is, but I also need to just be in that kind of headspace where I've got, an hour and a half, 2 hours to just be involved in the film, take in what's happening, react accordingly without thinking, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that, which makes it difficult. But in terms of Mubi, the honourable mention for that is The Substance. The Substance, I wasn't too sure what to expect going into it. Blew my mind. It's an absolutely incredible film. Demi Moore and the other lead, whose name I can never remember, sorry, are absolutely brilliant in the film. Everyone's amazing in it. It's just an absolute standout. So Mubi, The Substance, brilliant. We'll then talk about. We won't talk about MGM Plus because that's a little bit more niche. But we'll round up by talking about a couple of the free platforms. Now, I believe that there's ads running at the moment, which I don't know if I can do anything about that. Apologies. Yep, I don't think I can do anything about that. Part of the joys of live streaming, unfortunately. We're going to talk about a couple of the free streaming platforms. So, Tubi. Tubi is, I suppose, the big one, where it's recently hit the UK. It's been out in America for a little while, and we watched it for the last live show where we did a watch along of Mouse of Horror. And my word, that was a difficult film to digest. Mouse of Horror was absolutely abhorrently god awful. I hated it. 1 out of 10. But Tubi does also have, you know, some genuine horror films in it. It's not all dirge. They've got some of their own films. They've got, you know, Tubi Productions, and I've watched one of them, Festival of the Living Dead. It wasn't anything too special, I must say. But they do also get some genuine classic films on there. So for Tubi, I've started off with Blair Witch, the direct sequel to the Blair Witch Project. Blair Witch is a film I was very excited for watching because I am a fan of the Blair Witch Project. It's a film that over the years rewatches have given me a great appreciation for its ability to build up paranoia and tension. I've only seen Blair Witch Project 2, Book of Shadows once. It was terrible. I don't need to watch that again. But when Blair Witch came out in around 2016, I believe, oh god, it got my attention. We're going back to found footage. We're doing a direct sequel to the original. We're potentially having some appearance of Heather in it because of Heather's character, a relation of Heather's character being a focal point of that film. It's not a complete home run. I should stop using that analogy. It's not a complete home run for Blair Witch, but it does have some pretty decent moments in it, particularly one infamous moment where a character notices that one of the Blair Witch totems has their hair intertwined into it. And someone's freaking out, going, no, you just made these to mess with us. They snap the totem in half, and that breaks the girl's back. It's a really, really shocking moment the first time you see it. But that's a really kind of cool visual in Blair Witch on Tubi. That being said, some places the story goes later on, maybe not the way that I would have liked the series to go. It almost veers a bit too much into. While I am a fan of things like Grave Encounters, Wreck, you know, so on and so forth, VHS, for example, it's not necessarily what I want from a Blair Witch film. So I do feel that that's probably the best they could have done, but in terms of a film which I would recommend on Tubi if you've never seen it is Blair Witch, the direct sequel to the Blair Witch Project. Also, one of my favourite films from Ti West, The House of the Devil, that is on Tubi. It's also on a couple of other platforms, but The House of the Devil, it falls into that banner of doing a 70s set satanic panic type film, but it just looks authentic. Kind of similar to when we talked about, Ti West again, when we talked about Maxine later on, or earlier on, I should say, with The House of the Devil, everything from the title cards to the music to obviously the wardrobe and all that is going to go for authenticity, but it's not just a case of it's set in the 70s, it's a case of trying to make the film look like it could have been made in the 70s. Brilliant performances in that. House of the Devil, up there for me as one of my favorites. And then if you're a fan of Bruce Campbell, if you're a fan of a slasher but in the city with a zombie-esque murderous police individual, Maniac Cop. There's been a few sequels. I've never actually seen. Well, I've seen Maniac Cop 2, but I've never seen the third film. Maniac Cop is essentially a case of individuals are being gunned down and killed, along with members of the police force, by someone who appears to be a policeman. But as the story is progressing, we're finding out who that individual is and their want for revenge, and how they're even alive is fairly baffling. But Maniac Cop has some awesome moments in it, and it's definitely one worth a watch. And then we're going to go on to a service that I've only been recently made aware of by Fran from the live chat, Plex. Plex I've never even heard of, but is available on consoles and smart TVs. Another free service. And the first one is probably going to be a bit of a weird recommendation from me for that service. But I do think it is a film that has some merit. It's a film that some parts of it I do hate, but I can appreciate what they were going for. And it does have some genuinely interesting takes on setting up a reimagining for a backstory for a notorious serial killer. So on Plex, my first suggestion for that, if you've never seen it or if you want to revisit it, is Rob Zombie's Halloween. Now, I love the music of Rob Zombie. I love some of the films of Rob Zombie. I dislike some of the films of Rob Zombie. I'm more often than not universal on my dislike for his dialogue in a lot of his films, because it just appears to be low-hanging fruit. Everyone's a awful hillbilly, and there's no redeemable characters. There's no, there's no protagonists that you can really sort of feel for or get behind. It's one of those things where you kind of almost have to look past that. And I think that while the latter half of this film is uber violent and it's a different take on the Halloween story, but it's also kind of following the similar sort of beats, but maybe not up to, well, definitely not up to the same level of quality as the original. But what he does do with the backstory and developing who Michael is, and actually giving us a bit of an insight into Michael Myers as a child, and seeing when he starts repressing and shutting down in hospital, and also seeing how he breaks out of hospital in a very unnecessary scene, but also quite an uber violent scene. It's one of those things where I have mixed feelings on it, but there are some moments of actual brilliance in there. And the music in the film, Rob Zombie loves his 70s classics, and they do feature in this quite heavily. And then we'll move on to a classic from a different director, another Dario Argento film. Deep Red is available on Plex. Deep Red is it's a full derivative to say it's your typical giallo whodunit, but it's just got those hallmarks of classic Argento. The music is otherworldly. I'm pretty sure it might be another Goblin score. The kills are uber violent in places. Doesn't make too much sense at moments. And depending on which version you watch, one version is a little bit bloated with additional content, which doesn't really help with the story. But Deep Red is an absolute classic in terms of horror cinema, and it's from one of the greats who had a period of just smashing out absolutely brilliant horror films. So Deep Red from Dario Argento, definitely worth a watch. And then finally on Plex, I noticed a film which I think I rented a couple of years ago, and found it to be, again, ethereal. Found it to be quite an entrancing film. Doesn't necessarily completely smash it in terms of, I think the finale wasn't great, or didn't end in such a satisfying way, but built up an interesting story. And again, it felt like greatness was potentially there. There's just a couple of moments that feel a bit sudden. I don't know if that's an editing choice. I don't know if that was a case of that's how it was intended or things were cut for time. But I picked Come True. Come True follows a girl who does a sleep study test, And in doing so, there appears to be this other realm. And that other realm is just visually very stark and brutalist sort of architecture. And it's almost like Nightmare-esque, but in a sparse world. Not Nightmare-esque as in hell, brimstone, fire, all of that stuff, but more so in terms of just this stark absence of anything. So when you do see something, this dark, shadowy being that starts transposing into the real world, that's where the terror comes from. It's a film that I do need to give a rewatch. It's been a little while, but I remember there being enough there for me to think there's something in this film. The performances are pretty good. The music was generally pretty good. The pacing was, for the most part, good, but just a couple of moments that didn't really fully work for me. But yeah, hopefully, if you've got access to any of those streaming platforms, and if you haven't already recently watched those films or haven't ever seen those films, there'll maybe be something which has grabbed your attention. I mean, I was going to talk about MGM Plus, but I think I'll just quickly whittle through them because I know not a lot of people really use MGM Plus. But if you do, the remake of Maniac is on there. Green Room is an absolutely brilliant thriller. American Werewolf in London, just a classic. And then an honourable mention for a brilliant thriller, Dressed to Kill, Michael Caine. And it also has Troll 2 on there, which is one of the best, worst films ever made. So, one to think about if you want to laugh for an hour and a half, but don't expect any coherent plot or any form of good acting in that film. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, this has come to the end of another edition of the Ministry of Horror. If you're watching live, we will do a watch party. I'll probably step away for a moment to grab some snacks, but we'll do a little bit of a watch party. We'll find a film to watch. We'll chat horror, etc., etc. We'll chat wrestling, all that good stuff. But if you haven't already, and if you're listening to this on podcast platforms, please, on whatever platform you listen to, give the show a follow or subscribe, whatever the appropriate action is on that platform. If you're checking this out on YouTube or video on demand on Twitch, be sure to give the channel a follow on Twitch or a subscribe on YouTube. And if you do want to subscribe to the channel, which will just help with running the show, or also if you have Prime, you do get a free subscription for Twitch that you can use once a month. Consider using it on my show. Be very, very much appreciated. And then, of course, we have the Patreon, patreon.com/Ministry of Horror. There's a number of different tiers there. Even if you don't want to join at a tier, you can be a free member, which just helps boost the show's visibility on the Patreon platform. We've got bonus shows going on there, such as 90 Slay Fiance. That's kind of it for the plugin. Stick around if you're watching live. Otherwise, I shall catch you next time. Goodbye. Right. Let's pop some music on. I need to go stretch my legs, get some snacks. And that is the show. Oh. That is the show done. TV show on demand recommendation. Channel 4. Oh, sorry, Fran. I didn't even see that before ending the recording. Channel 4 vampire series Ultraviolet. Oh, I'm not familiar with that. To be honest, I never really think to watch 4OD unless I'm going on there for something in particular. Let's have a look. Ultraviolet TV show. Oh, is that The X-Files but with vampires? Is that Idris Elba? Stephen Moyer. Oh, okay. Joe Ahern. I recognise that name. What else has he worked on? Oh, Doctor Who. Trance. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, Fran. That's a good recommendation. Right. I'm just going to grab a snack. and then we'll chat some wrestling and we'll find a film to watch. Right, stick around. I've got my snacks. Right. Let's have a little look-see on Prime for what good horrors there are. One second. Right. Oh, jazzy. Okay, I don't like that. Right. Amazon. What have we got? There we go, right. Yeah, I don't know if I like this music. Skip. Okay, Prime Video. Let's see what we got. Movies. Horror movies. Included with Prime. So, I did watch the most recent episode of, I can't remember what much has happened on WWE. I've only seen bits and pieces, but I did watch the most recent episode of Dynamite. And, oh my word. That's the spot with Spike, whatever its stupid name is, was just, oh god. I mean, it's basically at this point a typical Mox spot, but I didn't like that at all. Not a fan. So I have got a suggestion for a film to watch, because I remember reading about this in the news a while ago and thinking this sounds pretty fun. There's a film called Mad Heidi, which is Mountain Girl Heidi is back with a vengeance, fighting a cheese-fueled dictator in this action-packed adventure comedy. It's an action-adventure comedy fantasy, but it's under horror for some reason. I'm sure this has been in the horror news before. It looks pretty odd. pretty oddball. Yeah, Mox is nuts. I mean, I don't imagine that there was like they were like legitimate nails. Like there must have been gimmicked sort of spikes, you know, so he wouldn't actually die. Basically, there must have been a way for those things to be able to pierce his skin without actually full on stabbing him, because otherwise that would have just been an actual death. Oh dear, I think I'll potentially cause some drama with the message. Whoops. I'm not a fan of that spot. It reminds me of when they do bamboo skews to the head. Yeah, which is another Mox thing, and that was when I was more of a fan, like more of a regular fan of AEW. Like I still watch the product. I am considering, just to save a few quid, cancelling Fight TV, because it is the sort of thing where it's like AEW isn't must-watch wrestling for me anymore. I still watch it, but I do find myself skipping a fair bit. Like, you know, there's more skippability in terms of like things like coherent storylines or, you know, whatever. There's good stuff in there for sure. There's good wrestling, but yeah, things like that I've just absolutely got no time for. I don't know if I'm making things better or worse with an emoji. Plus, you can watch it all a little later on ITVX, ITV4 free. Yeah, that's the thing. I do need to remember that I don't actually need to be spending, I think it's like £7.50 a month now. When I never watch it live, it's not, you know, must watch wrestling for me anymore. So yeah, maybe I'll just do that. Save a little bit of Wonga. Not sure. Okay, so yeah, Mad Heidi is on Prime. I've never actually seen The Last House on the Left remake, but yeah, I don't really like those sorts of films, to be honest. The Long Night, which I think says it's a Shudder exclusive, but it's on Prime. What's this? Oh, it's got 3.8 on IMDb. Let's try, after last time, let's try to watch something that's semi-decent. What else we got? What we got? What we got? Coffin Rock. What's this? A woman unable to conceive a child with her husband despite 15 months of trying. Oh, the production logo looks crap. That tells me enough. I'm not having any input this time. Oh, dearie me. So we've also watched Funhouse Massacre, which was, you know, could have been better, but I think a lot of it was hampered by its production. I mean, that was another film that had weird audio levels. That maybe it's a bit of a, I don't know. I was about to say maybe it's a bit of a Prime thing, but the Mickey Mouse crap was on Tubi. Okay, I think this has a fairly decent score. No, it doesn't. It's got 3.3. I was going to say The People in the Walls, but let's not go for that. 3.3 out of 10. Pretty bad. Okay, I see the sequel on here, and I know we briefly talked about it, and I'm sure I saw it many, many years ago, but I can't remember if I've ever actually seen it to the end. Should we watch Wishmaster? If the first Wishmaster is still on here, which it is, should we watch Wishmaster 1? I'm going to have some sweet treats. Okay. I've got Wishmaster queued up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to get through the ads and then pause it when it hits 0. Alright. Watch now. And it's got a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb. Okay. Only one short ad. Brilliant. Okay. So, we're going to be doing the watch along of Wishmaster. Currently got it on Prime. Hit pause at 0 on the time card. So, once ready, you're going to be doing a watch along. Let me know in the chat when you're ready, and we will hit play very shortly. God, it's already 10 o'clock. Okay. So after 3, I'm going to hit play. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and then play. And I'll do occasional timestamps. So if people are joining later on and wondering what we're watching, I'll just say we're watching Wishmaster. We're currently X amount of time into the film. There might be further ad breaks in the film, which will then probably throw us out of sync. It is what it is. It's just one of those things. But we'll see how we get on. So going to hit play in a moment. So after 3, we'll hit play. 1, 2, 3, play. Here we go. It's a New Line Cinema film. Live entertainment. Not a logo that instantly makes me think of anything in particular. Okay, Robert Kurtzman. Wes Craven's involved. I did always assume this was a Wes Craven directed film, but no, got that one wrong. Ah, good old Tony Todd. So I don't remember Tony Todd being in this film. I remember Robert Englund, so I'm pretty sure his character is not in it for that long. Oh, Greg Nicotero. Okay. Some good names worked on this film. There we go. Wes Craven was the executive producer. And that, I think, is the Soul Stone. I'll have to have a look what other things Robert Kurtzman did. Okay. Oh, damn. Yeah, Robert Kurtzman's worked on special effects for a number of things, from Beyond, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Predator, Evil Dead 2, Phantasm 2, Halloween 5, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Bride of Reanimator. Oh, God. The Exorcist 3, Tremors, Misery. Oh, my God. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Jason Goes to Hell, Maniac Cop 3, Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, special effects, makeup effects, In the Mouth of Madness, The Demolitionist, Lord of Illusions. Oh my god. Oh, this is pretty effects heavy. So I don't think it's actually done that much directing. Buried Alive, The Rage. Yeah, just done a lot of special effects work. Yeah, cool. Fear the Gin, all hail the ale. So anyone joining late, we're currently watching Wishmaster, available on Prime, and we're 6 minutes, coming up to 30 seconds. 6 minutes 30. So they're like servants of the Jinn. I know he saved the day there, but it's not entirely clear what exactly was going on prior to that with all the shimmering going on around them. Oh dear, drinking on the job. So I always assumed that was Robert Englund that gets crushed, not Ted Raimi. Uh-oh. That's a pretty big mistake. Right, enough sweets. Oh dear. That's a very heavy amount of friend zoning going on there. What she spotted. Yeah, I do question if I've ever really seen much of this film. I remember, like, and we may have already seen it in that opening part. I remember someone being like a worm person. And I remember what I thought was Robert Englund getting crushed, but I may well have been wrong about that. So yeah, it probably was a good idea watching this because, for me at least, I can't remember anything about this film. Well, that's a no. That's a no to dinner. That's quite interesting, sort of seeing the inside of the oh God, that's deafening. Sort of seeing the inside of the prison of the gem. Oh damn, he's a little worse for wear. You've seen some better days. It's like a mutant baby thing. What on earth is that? So I guess then granting that initial wish gave it the power to grow into its next sort of form. Yeah, there certainly is. It's almost got like Hellraiser-esque transitions, like Frank's rebirth in the first Hellraiser. Not sure about her acting so far. Tammy Lauren. What's she known for? So she was active from 1978 to 2014. She's known for Wishmaster. Yeah. The Last Flight of Noah's Ark. Walt Disney production. Lots of TV work. MacGyver. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Colour. Family Ties. The Hitchhiker. She's in Home Improvement as Patty. 7 episodes. Oh, he was Reggie. Reggie Bannister. Okay. Reggie from the Phantasm films. Oh! She played Liz Foley in the episode of Criminal Minds, Rabbit, which I'm assuming is when the lad has been kidnapped and a woman's also been kidnapped and she's been infected with rabies. It was her last role. Shit. Oh, God. That was grim. Apparently, Vern Troyer, of Austin Powers fame, was the smaller Wishmaster. Oh, and that was Tom Savini just then as one of the customers at the pharmacy. That's a weird vision. So is that a foreboding, like a premonition, or was that what happened with this fire that she saved her sister but not her parents? Okay, so we're getting a lot of fake outs in this. Right, I'm going to keep the film playing. I will be right back. Have I missed any deaths? What have I missed? Right. Wait, so is that the gin? Oh, Angus Scrimm's the narrator of this as well. Oh, I recognise the voice at the start. Oh dear. I'm provided with a magnum. Mm. No, I've just been reading about them, Fran, and it looks as though the third and fourth were shot back to back, which is always a hallmark of quality. I mean, there's a room full of eyewitnesses right there. I remember this first one being quite a big deal when it came out, but it actually only made 15 million on a 5 million budget. Oh my god. He tore his jaw off. There's old Kane Hodder. Jason. Yeah, there's a lot of smoking in this film. Although I do think smoking in films seems to be coming back. There was a period where it was just like you wouldn't see any character smoking, but I've noticed it more and more recently. What's happened to him? I don't really understand what happened to him there. I'm not a greedy man. How about $1 million? Oh, turned into glass. That's what that was. Oh god, there he is. Oh. So all the people affected are being disturbed by this. Some panting she's doing. Oh, that was him claiming their souls for his wishes. Gee. Here's the gin. Oh, shit. He actually took her face. God. Oh God. Oh, what on earth's that? Like a hellhound? Well, it's like Pumpkinhead. Oh dear. I mean, that's you've used your second wish pretty quickly. I mean, that's pretty unnecessarily violent of him. Didn't need to do that. Smashing her window. I mean, that's a pretty strong name, Johnny Valentine. Jesus. God. Jesus. His face was just ripped off. Oh my God. I mean, it's going to have a pretty good shout, Fran. Jason Candyman done Freddy in his sights. Who else? Are there any actors who've played Michael Myers in this? Oh my God. Excuse me. Oh. I mean, that's a lot of people is taken out in one hit. Ooh, listen to the music. Oh my God. Do, do, do. Ugh. Jeez, that whole thing has come out of his throat. Oh, God. He took an arrow to the knees, like Skyrim. Whoa. He actually bashed his face in. I always thought 90s films were more tame on gore. I don't know if that's just how they were released to the UK at that time, if the BBFC were more stringent on cuts. I don't know. I've never heard of this being a cut or released uncut. But I don't remember ever seeing that sort of gore in a mainstream film back in the day. Is that Dr. Jekyll? Mr. Hyde? Oh my god, it's cutting his head off. Oh, Jack the Ripper, yeah, possibly. That would make sense with the weapon, yeah. Oh, okay, so there's the djinn trying to come through into this realm. Mhm. That head sort of looked like Beavis. Beavis and Butthead. Oh, we got a little smooch. Next up, Wishmaster 2. No, thank you. Not in a bad way. I didn't mind that. I thought that was quite pretty fun. I thought the deaths were quite inventive, and as you mentioned in the chat, Fran, there was actually a lot of SFX work in this film. I wouldn't mind watching Wishmaster 2 at some point. I would say that this hasn't put me off the franchise. It was fun enough. And Wishmaster 2 is on Prime. It doesn't look like the other two are, but yeah, I haven't heard good things about 3 and 4. Yeah, agreed, Fran. Have to check out the second. That's also on Prime. Yeah, I thought it was alright, actually. I definitely haven't seen that before. I think I must have watched maybe the first 10 minutes on TV back in the day. A long time ago. Anyway, that is the end for Ministry of Horror and Watch Along. Thank you very much for sticking around. I'll get the podcast up live this weekend. It's going to be a busy old weekend. I've got 90 Slay Fiancé to edit and hopefully upload to Patreon, and all that stuff. I've got work and overtime to do. I've got other bookkeeping stuff. It's just a lot. It's going to be a very busy weekend, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Sunday retro stream will probably be Zelda, but we shall see. We shall see. I think I need to be more proactive on that. The last few sort of streams has been a lot of running back and forth, and some of that has been the game, some of that has been me. So 50-50 on that. Or maybe I'll do Final Fantasy X again, because I actually really enjoyed that. Don't know. Not too sure. We'll figure something out. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend. Catch you later.